Once a sketch is fully defined, there's a way to cause it to become over-defined. Now this usually happens when you add too many dimensions. For instance, if I edit this sketch once again and add another dimension, SolidWorks will tell me right away that there's a problem. It tells me that the sketch is over-defined and it gives me two options. I can either make this a driven dimension or I can leave it as a driving dimension. First, I'll choose to make this a driven dimension. Notice that the dimension appears in a gray color. This differentiates it from driving dimensions like these. A driven dimension is just there as a reference to the geometry. It doesn't control the geometry. With a driving dimension, on the other hand, if I double-click it, its value can be changed and the geometry will update. For recap, driven dimensions don't control the geometry. Driving dimensions do control the geometry. If I double-click a gray driving dimension, SolidWorks will tell me that it cannot be changed. So what's the purpose of driven dimensions? They can actually be very useful. For instance, I can put a dimension here to measure the diagonal distance of this rectangle. That way, when I make changes to the width or height, I can see the diagonal distance right away. So that's what you get when you decide to go with driven dimensions. The other option you have when you put in an over-defining dimension is to leave the dimension driving. This leaves you with a conflict and lots of yellow. Yellow geometry in SolidWorks is not a good thing. The reason for the yellow is that there are two dimensions here, each trying to control the same thing. In order to get rid of the problem, I can simply delete one of the over-defining dimensions, and the yellow goes away. SolidWorks also has a useful tool for solving these types of errors called the Sketch Expert. It's useful for larger, more complex sketches where you aren't sure which dimension or relation to delete. Again, I'll add the same dimension I just deleted and leave it driving to create a conflict. To activate the Sketch Expert, I'll click on the Over-Defined message in the status bar. Now in the Property Manager, I have two options for repairing the sketch. The first is by pressing the Diagnose button. When I do, SolidWorks examines the sketch and automatically finds solutions to create a valid sketch. In the results box, I can scroll through the different solutions. Notice in the graphics area that a slash mark shows which dimension or relation will be deleted, and the last box in the Property Manager lists what will be deleted as well. When I find a solution I'm happy with, I can click Accept and the changes are made. I'll hold off on pressing Accept so I can show you the other method Sketch Expert uses, Manual Repair. When I select it, conflicting dimensions and relations are listed in the Property Manager. I can now go through the list and delete any dimensions or relations that I wish till the sketch is no longer over-defined. In this example, I'll select one of the duplicate dimensions and press Delete. Immediately, the Property Manager displays a message that the sketch can now find a valid solution, so I'll press OK. Depending on the geometry in your sketch, you might also end up with entities highlighted in red that can't be solved. In this example, you can see a simple sketch with some dimensions already added. Notice that this height is already set to 3 inches. If I put a dimension on this edge and also make it 3 inches, I'm going to have a problem. SolidWorks is telling me that by putting in this dimension, I'm causing invalid geometry. If you look at this red line here, you can see that if this edge were allowed to become 3 inches, this line would have to shrink down to nothing. Whenever you run across yellow sketches, or red ones, or any other sketch error for that matter, always remember that it was probably the very last thing you did that caused the problem. So the easiest way to get out of trouble is to use Undo.